Hey, what's up everybody? We're going to go ahead and reassemble this Motorola Moto G. One of the first things we're going to do is put some double-sided adhesive just on the back of the battery. If you're putting in a new battery, it may have adhesive you can use. You wouldn't have to do this step. So since I've pulled the foam adhesive off, it's not going to have anything to attach itself to, so we're just going to put this back on. We can pull the backing off of the tape. We'll go ahead and insert the battery back into the phone. This is VHB high temperature tape. You can use a few different types of tape. 3M double-sided adhesive. Normally either clear or black will work just fine also. Put the battery in its slot. Now it is rounded, so you want to make sure you put it in as centered as possible so you don't have any battery pushing up on the back side of your logic board when you put it in. Go ahead and take the battery power cable and pull it through. The next step is to take our logic board and we line it up so we can put the power cable back in its slot. And it can be a little bit tricky. This is usually the easiest. To line it up, put it just right on top, and then push it back in place. There we go. Now we can fold it over and just reseat everything. Now you'll notice there's two things. One here at the top and one down here, these pins that the board kind of sits on. Make sure those are lined up before you start putting the screws in to make sure that the logic board is seated properly. Now we can go ahead and put all of our screws back in. Remember, the two black ones go at the top, two black ones go at the bottom, and then the remaining yellow gold screws go down the sides of the device. And you want to put them in snug, nice and tight, but you don't want to over screw them. You don't need to strip your screws out. These have a little bit of a locking compound on them, so once you get them inserted, they'll stay in place. But you also don't want them loose. Alright, here's the last screw on the right side. We can go ahead and start working on the screws across the bottom here. Alright, just a few more screws to put in. Almost finished. And then just one up here in the top corner. I left our stripped out screw for last so I can be bitter about it as I put it back in. Alright, there we go. Now, if you left any that are really loose, you may want to go back and just double check their tightness. Remember, they don't have to be extremely tight, but just snug. Alright. Now the next step is a little bit tedious, but it's really important that you do this to make sure that everything sits down nice and flat. We need to remove all the excess adhesive on the back of the display and the frame of the phone. So anything that's sitting up, so all this little tiny tape down the sides, all the tape across the bottom, anything that's on the back side of the LCD display, all needs to be removed. Now if you buy a display and it has adhesive already attached to it, you can skip the next step of putting adhesive down. But I'll show you exactly how I put the adhesive down because I know my display is secured nice and tight and won't come back up. One thing to keep in mind though is it probably won't be the same water resistant certification as this one is, because this one is an actual sill itself, and I'll just be using some double-sided tape. So now that we have the screen cleaned off, you can see right here's our VHB tape. This is 1mm. I'll be using some 2mm in this repair as well. We can go ahead and take that tape. We're going to go ahead and start down the two sides of the phone. So putting the 1mm basically around the interior portion of the phone, and then the 2mm around the outside portion of the phone. Now the reason why it's so important to clear off is all of the remaining adhesive is when you put this tape down, you don't want anything sitting underneath it that's going to cause it to want to pull up or push the display away, or else you can cause a unfortunate incident of your display wanting to come up regularly, and the only way to do it again is to pull everything back off and put new tape down. So it pays off to be diligent in this part to make sure that there's no bumps or wrinkles in the tape as you're putting it down. So I'm just using a flathead screwdriver to push the tape down in place, and then we'll just cut it to the right size. We'll go ahead and do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So again, being careful not to wrinkle the tape and to not get it on top of the connector. We also wanted to go up the side of the phone, want to lay it nice and flat down the side of the phone. So sometimes when you put the tape down, it's going to kind of want to pull in towards the center as you're pushing it down. Just use your finger to kind of push it back in line with the mid-frame of the phone. Now, with the two sides done, we can go ahead and start on the bottom and the top of the device. We're going to be using a little bit thicker or wider tape, which is some 2mm tape. You don't want to cover any openings in the phone, so you want to make sure you don't cover up any speaker slots, anything that would be part of a microphone. So anything that has a cutout or a discoloration, don't tape over that. And you can cut the tape to be angled so it fits in the round grooves on the sides of the phone. That'll give you a little bit better adhesion when you're reapplying the display to the mid-frame of the phone. Now I left the top portion of the bottom because I'm going to put some 1mm tape across there as well, which was what was there beforehand. And again, we want to be careful right here. We have the camera proximity sensor. We don't want to tape over any of that on this phone. You also want to be careful not to get any tape on top of the lens of the camera. It can be really, really hard to clean off, so just try to make sure that nothing actually touches it. Go ahead and start on the opposite side. We're just going to try to fill this little tiny gap here with a little excess piece of tape that we have. Alright, now that we have that done, we can go ahead and just put on the thinner pieces across the top of the black portion of the logic board area, just to make sure you get nice solid adhesion when we put the display back on. There's nothing worse than having your display start to peel back up after you put it on. Lots of tape can help prevent that. Alright, now with all the adhesive tape put on, what I suggest doing before you start peeling the backing off, let's actually go ahead and reattach our display. And the reason that you want to do this is that you can test it. And I find the easiest way to reattach the display is line the cable up as best you can. And I'm sorry, I can't show you this because it's a funky angle. I have to use my finger to cover it. But then just take your finger and pull it towards the connector, and that'll go ahead and seat it. And that's the easiest way that I found to do that. Then you can go ahead and flip down the connector slot on it with a spudger. My phone is already on, so the display just popped right on. Now what you can do before you take all the backing off the tape is test everything. You can test your Wi-Fi, test phone calls, everything that you want to make sure that's still functional on your phone. You can do that without having to adhere the display to the phone itself. If you need to go back and do something, you still can. So you know the display is definitely working. Alright, so now we can just kind of pull it up a little bit and set it aside and kind of hold it out with your fingers, and then just take your X-Acto knife or something and start peeling the backing off of the tape. And this can be a little bit tricky since the display is already attached, but honestly it's so much easier to do it this way. I've had to attach a few of these displays, and display will just kind of pull itself back on the tape, and you'll have to pull it up and off, and sometimes it damages it and you got to relay your tape all the way back down. So this is the way that I would suggest doing it. It takes a few seconds longer to do, and it's kind of fumbly because you only have one hand to do it, but I think it's better than the alternative. Just work your way all around and peel all the backing off of the tape. Alright, we're all the way down to just our last piece here. Let's go ahead and pull that back. And the next step is to go ahead and seat your display. Find it easiest to seat the top in first. So push the corners in, make sure they're lined up, and then you can push it down towards the bottom. And just work your fingers up the sides and make sure everything is stuck down nice and tight. Everything's feeling pretty good here. Next step is to go ahead and put our little bracket on the back again with our 3 screws. This is just got to be for charge port support is my guess. We'll go ahead and insert the screws in here real fast. And again, they don't have to be extremely tight. You just want to get them nice and snug. They have a little tiny bit of locking material on them so they won't come loose. Alright, now we can just go ahead and pop our back cover on, and we can go ahead and power the phone on. And really that's the full disassembly of this phone. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them up in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them for you. I'll throw the links in for some of the repair tools and things like the tape will be down in the description of the video as well. As always, I appreciate you watching. You want to see future disassembly, reassembly videos, go ahead and subscribe. I'll post up a couple, especially now since it's phone season. Hit the like button if you found it helpful. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.